This 1938 Dodge Brothers commercial sedan was built for a traveling salesman.
In the day, this would have been used by a baker, a dress shop, or a hat shop.
This 1952 Buick Super Estate wagon is a Woody, right to the core.
This is actually structural lumber that we're looking at here.
Cool cars, good people, great car stories. Rick Pekulski did a frame-up restoration on this 1938 Dodge Brothers commercial sedan because he couldn't help himself.
It was pretty decrepit. Half of the grille was missing. When you're a crazy car guy, we sometimes see the diamond in the rough. We look past all of that stuff and we vision the end product. I had a passion for old cars. It started when I was a little kid, when Dad used to buy me Matchbox cars on his way home from work on Friday night.
Rick's sedan was rusting in a farmer's field when he first saw it.
A fellow approached me one day at work and he said, "How would you like a 1938 Dodge sedan delivery?" My ears perked up. And so he showed me pictures of this rusted out field truck that was at his uncle's farm in Saskatchewan. And for $750, I could have this thing.
The 1938 Dodge Brothers RC commercial sedan is essentially an enclosed version of the Dodge Brothers RC pickup. It just has a body on the back. It's not the same as a panel truck though, because the panel truck had more space in the back and it had clamshell doors.
John and Horace Dodge were pioneers in the early days of mass automobile manufacturing in Detroit.
1938 was the last year that these trucks were badged as Dodge Brothers trucks. Dodge Brothers, of course, was the original name of the company before Chrysler bought it.
Dodge used the term commercial sedan. Ford and Chevy would have called it a sedan delivery. And sedan deliveries from that period are fairly rare and scarce. They didn't build many of them, but I think that's what appealed to me.
Sedan deliveries are small commercial vehicles built on passenger car frames.
Commercial vehicles aren't as collected as passenger cars simply because there weren't nearly as many of them. They got used very hard. They were very Spartan inside, not really that pleasant to drive because they were just made to do the work. What you did when you had invested money in one of these is you worked it until there was no value left, and then you scrapped it.
I was probably one of the early people to actually see a collector status in this vehicle. Today they're sought after, but very few survive as original restorations. You'll see them, they'll be hot rodded.
Being faithful to the sedan's original construction is much more complicated than modernizing it.
I guess you could say I'm a purist at heart when it comes to the old cars. I like to keep everything original, restored as they were when they came off the assembly line. I can appreciate the other world of cars, such as customs and rods, but that's not where my head is at.
Commercial sedans were modest vehicles that were built to be reliable.
In the day, this was a light commercial vehicle that would have been used by a baker, a dress shop, or a hat shop, or any business that had, light deliveries to make.
A commercial sedan, or a panel truck for that matter, was used by somebody who wanted whatever they were carrying to be in out of the weather, which it wouldn't be if it was in a pickup bed.
This vehicle came with only a driver's seat, which made it easy to enter into the cargo area. If you wanted the passenger seat, that was an option.
The vehicle was all about work in its day, and fixing it turned into a huge job for Rick.
It wasn't a case of just this or that. It really needed everything. If you're starting with something that's very rough or in pieces, it's a long journey to acquire those things and bring them all together. I really couldn't tell you how many hours truly, but I wouldn't be off the mark to say probably a couple or 3,000 or 4,000 hours when you encompass the whole thing.
Rick did most of the work himself, but had to bring in specialists from time to time.
Along the way, you have to bring in craftspeople who have certain talents, and you learn from those people, and they contribute to the whole project in the long run. It's a labor of love, it's a passion. You don't really look at how many hours and how many dollars are going out the door because you have this disease in your blood that's causing you to do this crazy stuff.
The restoration is true to the sedan's origins, right down to the hand-painted business sign.
It's a very correct restoration, so the last thing I would want on here would be vinyl lettering. This was done through a method they call pouncing. So if you look closely, you'll see the brush streaks. It's all done with a painter's one-shot enamel, and it gives it a very correct, authentic period look. I worked with a couple of old fellows who were mechanics all their life, and my mission was actually to absorb as much of this knowledge and information and expertise as I could, because I had a real desire to learn everything there was to know about restoring antique vehicles. The other thing that's extremely rare on this vehicle are these metal side mount covers. Since 1981, I have found 5 of them, and not one person knew what they were, and I bought all 5 of them.
There's nothing fancy about the interior of the Dodge sedan.
All 1938 Dodge trucks were painted the same gray interior regardless of what your exterior color choice was. I have a crank handle on the dash here, and I can crank the windshield open quite a bit. If I need some cool air, I feel like chewing on a few flies. They came without heaters. Those were generally a dealer-installed option if you wanted it. The one that I have in this truck is a Firestone heater. It has the Firestone F logo on it, and it does have a defrost feature as well. So some of the heaters of the day would only give you heat at your feet. This one being deluxe has both.
Filling up with gas takes a bit of inside knowledge.
I'm sitting on the gas tank. So if I get out, I flip the seat forward. There's a cover plate over top of the gas tank. It flips up to support the seat, and then you reach in and there's your gas cap. Confuses a lot of gas jockeys. This is a Chrysler Flathead 6 engine, 218 cubic inches, putting out approximately 90 horsepower. These engines were very reliable workhorses. Dodge used these flatheads right from the late 20s, early 30s, right in as late as, I believe, 1967 or 1968, you would still buy Dodge and Fargo trucks with a flathead 6. Plenty of power for what the vehicle is. The vehicle will cruise down the highway at 55, 60 miles an hour, not a problem.
After the break, turning a car hobby into a career.
Honey, did you know what you're getting yourself into when you met me?
It took a while.
When Rick Pekulski takes his wife Dorothy for a drive in their Dodge Brothers commercial sedan, they imagine what it was like on the road way back in 1938.
I think it's the feel of driving them that is such a treat, that it's so different from hopping in your modern car and getting there fast. You got to go a little slower. You enjoy the scenery, you enjoy the drive.
Yeah.
It's fun. It kind of puts you back at that time. Even if you have a radio, an old AM radio in the vehicle that you're driving, it's just a different world.
When we're driving down the road, I envision that we're driving back in 1938. And I always figure if you want the feel of what a 38 Plymouth felt like going down the road, then you leave bias ply tires on it and you drive 6-volt electricals. And I call it adventures in motoring. So if you have a breakdown, honey, this is where we're having the picnic. I'll fix the fuel pump while you're making the sandwiches.
Sometimes I think it would have been so cool to live at that time as well.
Does it drive you crazy that I'm out in the shop so much?
No, it doesn't. I know that you're doing what you love and it's your passion. I want to see you happy and it makes you feel good.
I'm a partner, so I try to be there to listen to him. If he's got any problems or wants to talk through stuff, I listen.
You know, a lot of people when I left the telecom industry thought I'd lost my marbles, but you know what? I was pursuing a passion. An old fellow once told me, he says, do what you love, the money will come. Today, My time is spent between doing body off, frame up restorations, and I also provide a brokerage service to people looking to sell their collector vehicles.
He knows how to market vehicles because he's got a marketing background, so he tries to sell stuff on eBay. He's really good at all that stuff.
I'm just happy as a clam because I'm living my dream, and if I was to win the lottery next week, I probably wouldn't do anything different than what I'm doing today.
Usually after work when I come home, I pop in here because I know he's in here and we'll chit-chat. And he'll tell me how his day has gone.
Honey, did you know what you're getting yourself into when you met me?
Not at the beginning. It took a while.
You know, there wasn't a road trip that you said I shouldn't go on, or a car you said I shouldn't buy. What more can a car guy need or want beyond a woman like that? You're my honey.
Aww.
I love you.
When we come back, restoring a rotten Woody.
And if a car like this sat outside, Mother Nature certainly took its toll.
For Robert Reese, the 1952 Buick Super Estate wagon is a study in craftsmanship.
I happened to spot a 52 Buick Woody wagon in a backyard. Went home, researched it, and found out it was an extremely rare car.
This Buick is rare because it was the last of the big three American cars to have structural wood components.
Buick was the last major brand to offer a wooden station wagon. The reason was probably because, while everybody else was building them out of metal, a handmade wooden station wagon, even if it had a steel roof, still had some of the premium craftsmanship aura that I think Buick wanted to have for their cars.
Despite its ungodly condition, I bought it, and that was the beginning of the Buick story in my life.
Robert's Buick had been sitting outside, and its wooden structure had mostly rotted away.
There isn't many survivors, as you can well imagine. If a car like this sat outside, Mother Nature certainly took its toll. Here's a piece of the original wood. This is part of the D-pillar, and you can see what kind of condition it was actually in when we started, and all of this is actually original. So that information is extremely valuable when you're doing restoration work. And having a pattern, even as rough as it is worth its weight in gold.
Buick sent their Woodies out to another company to have the bodies built by hand.
The body was built by a company called Ionia. General Motors really wasn't set up to do this type of woodwork. It's pretty intricate, as you can see, so they decided to outsource it. On the B-pillar here, this is actually an applique, but here, this is actually structural.
The Super Estate wagon was the middle line of custom-built Buicks.
There was only a total of 2,000 Woodies built by Buick, and only 1,641 of them were actually Supers. The rest were Roadmasters.
The 1952 Buick Super Estate wagon was the most expensive model of the mid-range of the Buick cars. Specials were the cheapest, Roadmasters were the most expensive, and Supers were right in the middle. The Estate wagon was the top Super.
Putting the damaged Super back together required expert woodworking skills.
There was times putting the back end of that car together with all that wood and it being totally structural, I was very much intimidated.
All these components on this car were laminated together and then basically had to be shaped.
There was many an evening I just had to back away from it.
The lift gate and the tailgate here, I didn't do. I farmed these out to a guy who has incredible skills. You can see basically the skill involved in the mortise and tenon joints that he did here and the incredible fit that he was able to accomplish. almost like a boat. Everything is basically on a curve here. Needless to say, challenging. All of this hardware is original. There is no steel frame that the wood is actually mounted on. This is actually structural lumber that we're looking at here. The insert is mahogany, Honduras mahogany. The face that we're looking at here is also mahogany. So as far as cabinet making skills, you can kind of leave those behind. It's more of a giant carving / boat building project.
Robert rebuilt the upholstery from illustrations and marketing brochures.
The interior is as close as we could possibly get to being a photograph in time. We tried in every way to replicate all the fabrics and exactly how it was sewn up.
All these luxury features make the Super Estate a heavy car, even by the standards of its day.
You're over 4,000 pounds here, so you're not going to set any speed records with this car.
The transmission in this car is a Buick Dynaflow automatic transmission, invented by Buick and supposedly a fully automatic transmission. In reality, when you start off and drive, you might as well be starting off in high gear, which means acceleration is dismal. If you start off in low and then shift into drive once you're moving, it's a little bit better. But I still wouldn't advise drag racing it.
So this car is equipped with a straight 8. It's 263 cubic inch, approximately 130 horsepower. Many engines in this vintage were flatheads, but this has a removable head with all the valves in it. You could actually take the head off, grind the valves rather than having to remove the whole engine to do a valve grind. What's interesting is that you can unlatch the hood from both sides, and then two guys can just pick up the hood. So it gives you really nice access to working on it. But I must say, from a restoration point of view, getting this hood set up and working properly is not for the faint of heart. Dual horns, beautiful sounding, very loud. It was like a locomotive. You didn't miss one of these things when somebody honked the horn at you, that's for sure.
Up next, a maiden voyage in a Buick Super Estate wagon.
You know, here we are with 31 miles on it. It really is running extremely well.
She's dead quiet.
After countless hours of restoration work, Robert Reese is finally ready to take his 1952 Buick Super Estate wagon out on the road.
And to think that this is this car's maiden voyage after restoration.
Yeah.
You know, here we are with 31 miles on it.
It's an incredibly good feeling to actually spend all this time, effort, and money and finally have a tangible car that you can hop in, turn the key, and actually take it for a drive.
It's one of those rare moments in life where it all kind of comes together, and it certainly makes it worthwhile.
Robert's friend Josh is also restoring a vintage Buick, a pursuit these two classic car lovers have in common.
That's always a wonderful thing in life if you can connect with somebody and share similar ideas and interests.
Well, I couldn't have made it in progress I've made on my car without your help and your knowledge, that's for sure. So
Yeah, it helps a bit to have somebody that has a few parts kicking around and has spent a little time working on these things.
He's got half a wall full of, parts. It's like walking into a dealership from 1953 and seeing every conceivable part you could ever use for your car, and finding somebody who, not only shares your hobby, but shares your passion and shares your enthusiasm. It's a rare thing.
The greatest reward comes in taking the old cars out for a spin.
It's a good feeling getting behind the wheel of a 60-year-old car and she lights up, and when you press on the gas and you just take off down the road and you see other people giving you the thumbs up. It's a nice feeling. You know?
Yeah, it's quite rewarding, actually.
And the thing I admire most about cars of this era is just their individuality, and their personality.
Yeah, absolutely.
You could tell a Cadillac from a Buick, from a Chevy, from a Pontiac, from an Oldsmobile. I mean, even though they're all GM products, they all had their own bodies, they all had their own grills and personalities.
It takes a high degree of dedication to restore and maintain these classic Buicks.
I think the very best thing about these cars is it gives you a sense of connection to the past, and it's something deeper than just the car itself. When you can see something that's real and relatable, and it isn't a picture in a book or something you see on TV, or it's something in front of you that you can touch. It's something that literally comes out of the past and, it is real again.
I thought I knew something about restoring cars back then. Boy, I was sadly mistaken, I'll tell you. It's a learning process, and it's a long one.
Well, any hobby is a gentle madness, right? And it's it's a fine line between doing just enough and then doing too much.
The old saying, it starts off with an interest and becomes a passion, and then it's an obsession, and I'm somewhere in between the last two.